which was very well received. And I would say to anyone that people do not realize the impact, the joy of simply going ahead and delivering them. And when people receive them, it's not about a turkey at that point in time. It's really about them having a sense of communication, a sense of being in touch, and just a sense of welcome. And sometimes just a sense of communication. And so it was truly, truly a wonderful opportunity to do so. And I trust that all will be well, and we'll be able to do the exact same thing next year. And which is just to remind those that don't know, is that what we do is we choose a day, normally going to be maybe say a Thursday morning at 8 a.m. where we start, and everybody or anybody can call every hour on the hour for a 24-hour period, and I will answer the phone, take your name and basic contact information, and then give you one of those wonderful Christmas turkeys. I do deliver them myself. I set a date for delivery, and I drive literally from Somerset to St. George's and all points in between to deliver them. And again, I continue to be excited or to be just impressed by the level of output and input and communication and thankfulness, really, that people have, and the excitement that goes around that. And so tonight, we're going to now start our first show for the year. As I said earlier, we have two guests, and they have, I believe, a very interesting topic to talk about. It's very, very broad, and I've been told already before we came on air that, listen, it's very, very broad what they do. What I'm going to do, though, is ask the questions, and then the guests can make it as broad as they choose in terms of providing information. Our guest this evening is Mr. Lawrence Scott, who is the chair of the Bermuda Aviation Authority, and Mr. Lester Nelson, who is the CEO of the Bermuda Airport Authority. And everyone knows that when I first start off these things, it's a conversation. It's going to be a 2-hour conversation. Everyone starts off by saying that, oh, that seems to be so long. And then we get towards the end and say, oh, man, time's going so far. So we'll get through that. And our guests this evening are going to start off. The first question always is to introduce yourselves in the way that you would like to be known. Because so often what happens is Bermuda is a small place, and we think we know everybody. But it's interesting when people introduce themselves as to what they want to say that's different. What do they want people to know about? And then we go from there. And so I will give you guys a chance to start. You can decide who goes first. And Mr. CEO is deferring to the chair. And so, Mr. Scott, take it away. Yes, introduce yourself as who you are or how you'd like to be known, and maybe one or two things that people don't know about you.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Anthony. And thank you for having us on your show, and also the listening audience, and a Happy New Year to all. My name is Lawrence Scott. I'm the chairman of the Airport Authority. I'm also an MP for Constituency 24, Warwick Southeast, for the PLP, Progressive Labour Party. But I also am, and one thing that people don't know about me right now is that I'm one of the managers down at Rosewood Hotel, Rosewood Bermuda here. So I'm into luxury hospitality. And then for full disclosure, I also am the CEO of Scott's Craft, which is a private jet brokerage here in Bermuda.
Okay, and give us a little bit about your background, whether it be schooling or academics or whatever you've been doing.
So I went to the BI, not the Barclay Institute, but the Bermuda Institute, then transferred to Florida Air Academy, where I graduated. Went from there to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, the Daytona Beach campus. Ended up with a my commercial pilot license. And then from there, I went down to Lynn University. I got some time in a Lear 65, and then went on to get a type rating in a Boeing 737-200 at the time. So that will date me. And I have since come back to Bermuda, worked as a manager or supervisor of airport operations for JetBlue, went into politics as the MP, and then went onward to Minister of Transport for the Progressive Labour Party, and also the chairman of the Airport Authority, where I am today.
Okay, and that's a lot, but it's going to be interesting as you guys go through, because I know there's some commonality between the two of you.
Yes. But
Mr. Nelson, go for a big smile. Go ahead.
Well, that's going to be a tough act to follow. Good evening, Mr. Richardson, and good evening and Happy New Year to your listeners. Thank you for having us here tonight. I'm Lester Nelson. I'm the Chief Executive of the Bermuda Airport Authority, a position I've held for almost 9 years, appointed in March of 2017 when the Airport Authority was established. We'll talk about that later. My background: went to Purvis Primary School, Warwick. Went to Warwick Academy with you.
Okay, there's one commonality. Keep going.
Went to Bermuda College with you. Went to flight school in Canada. Was exposed to just a whole different world out there at the Moncton Flight Center. And the plan was to become an airline pilot. So I obtained all of the licenses, the private, the commercial, the multi-engine, and so forth. Transferred to the States in Florida. Went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Same as Lawrence. Upon graduation, I was employed as an instructor pilot at Embry-Riddle. I did that for about a year and a half, and that was great fun. Came back to Bermuda, worked in banking for a little bit, but then I went back to Florida to work as an airline pilot in a small airplane. It was a twin-engine Cessna 402, flying it around Florida and to the Bahamas and to Cuba. That was good fun as well. Didn't make a lot of money. And then, of course, the big break for me came around in 1995 upon the withdrawal of the U.S. Navy from Bermuda. I think many people remember that. The government was required to take on the responsibility of running the entire airport, and that opened up a lot of opportunities for me, right? So I joined the Department of Airport Operations back then. I was working there during the 9/11, right, which was a significant time, obviously, in aviation. Left aviation for a couple of years, went back into banking. I think you were there when I was there. As I said earlier, I've come back. This is my last stop. And been here in the Airport Authority, helped to set it up 9 years ago. And we're doing some interesting things now and over the next couple of years as a part of our strategic plan, which we can talk about tonight.
Okay. So the commonality for sure is the fact that you're both licensed pilots.
Yes, we are. And you know what? There's one thing that I did forget. I have to give the props to Queen's University. I did get my MBA from the Smith School of Business at Queen's University. And that was I obtained that when I was working at the Department of Airport Operations around 2001.
Gotcha. Okay. So I was going back to the fact that the both of you are trained pilots. Well, first of all, give us a rough idea of how many people in Bermuda are trained pilots. A lot of times, I think that we don't think about it right now. The quote unquote the star is one of the pilots on Bermuda Air. Yeah.
Yes.
But generally, how many people?
He's the most well-known one.
Okay, fine.
I'll say that.
Well, based on his current job, I mean, I know there are others that are Bermudians that are overseas working, but roughly speaking, how many pilots are qualified in Bermuda? How many qualified pilots in Bermuda?
So Tariq Lynch Wade hosted a seminar about 6 months ago, just during the summer, and had, I would say, what I counted was about just shy of 100 Bermudians locally and overseas that were licensed pilots, and from student pilot all the way through to your ATP, air transport pilot. And so there are quite a number of Bermudian pilots. The only thing is that you don't hear much about us because there's not a pathway, a clear defined pathway like there is for insurance, like there is for being a doctor or a lawyer. And that's sort of where the Airport Authority is trying to create that pipeline, create that pathway, create that that awareness that you can get into aviation and that there are different facets of aviation, not just sitting in a cockpit, not just loading bags on a plane, or a flight attendant or in-flight part of the in-flight crew, but airfield lighting, aviation weather, all of these type of things, and air traffic control. So all of these can be done here. I mean, even somewhat very closely related, but not directly. Well, actually, I would say it is directly in the aviation field. Crash fire rescue, where there is the fire department that is specifically designed just for aviation and just for the airport here. And so that's what we're looking to do. And so the short answer to your question is roughly about 150 people.
Oh. Yeah, that's correct.
And that in and of itself is a shock. Just that there are that many persons, except from student all the way through, because you don't hear much about them, that's for sure. I mean, not thankfully, I guess, but Bermuda Air and a few others, well, Bermuda Air in particular as an airline has highlighted Tariq Lynch Wade. There are others as they fly in, they get recognition, but you're right, there is no consistency or there's no constant recognition of them, and so sometimes it falls away. But again, it's interesting because both of you went through that process. What interested you in becoming a pilot, either of you, each of you? Going back, because I want to give a chance to those who are listening now, for example, there may be some young people or some parents.
So my interest came, well, I actually wanted to be a marine biologist.
Well,
that was my initial goal, was to be a marine biologist, and like follow Jacques Cousteau and all of that. But my uncle Jimmy, my father's brother, got me this game called Flight Simulator. This would be back in like 1995, 1994, somewhere around there. And I started playing it and couldn't stop. My parents noticed the enthusiasm that I had for it and pretty much the knack that I had, and then sent me to Florida Air Academy, where I was able to get an education, and part of the curriculum was flight.
Okay.
And so therefore I got my student pilot, I got my private pilot and all of that while in high school, and went from there. And so after my first discovery flight, I wasn't going anywhere else.
well, and I'll ask you in a minute, what is a discovery flight?
So discovery flight is when you and the instructor, so as Lester said, he was an instructor, will go up. You've never flown before. They take you in a small, mine was a Piper Warrior. No, actually it was a Tiger. Sorry, a Grumman Tiger. And they do most of the flying. But then they give you the controls. They go to what's called the practice area, so where we do all of our maneuvers. So like the TCD of aviation. And they give you the controls. They tell you turn left, tell you turn right, go up, down, adjust. And then they do the landing, but they let you sort of hold the thing. And you're hooked ever since.
Wow. Okay, fair enough. And Mr. Nelson sits back smiling again.
Well, like a lot of young boys, you grow up playing with trucks and cars and so forth, right? So we're very, very visual, and you know, we like touchy-feely things. So for me, I actually wanted to be a bus driver when I was younger. You never believe it. Yeah, I actually had to catch the bus. I mentioned earlier that I lived in Warwick, but we moved to Smiths Parish. And so I had to catch the bus up over to Purvis. Didn't want to have to transfer schools. And I just, the buses were the biggest vehicles on the road, and they're carrying all these people, and always loved buses, even like buses to this day. Essentially, an airplane is a flying bus. Okay, not to dumb it down, right? But it's still, in the transportation business in terms of moving people safely, I might add, from point A to point B, right? Except that it has wings, flies at 40,000 feet and goes at 350 miles an hour, but it's a machine. So I've always been attracted to different machines. Buses became airplanes. The other attraction was when I was younger, my aunt lived in St. David's by the lighthouse. So back then, in the 70s, as we all know, the U.S. Naval Air Station was here, and there was a lot of military activity. So whenever I went to her house, it was about sitting out on the porch, watching all the different military aircraft, in addition to the airliner jets operating. There was a much more diverse, range of aircraft operating in Bermuda, frankly, in the 70s and 80s up to the mid-90s. Yes. Until the Navy left. So that was the attraction, and I more or less pursued it. It's something, you always heard people say, follow your heart, do what you enjoy. I didn't know where it would take me, and it's worked out really well.
Wow. That's interesting. And, I say, well, in terms of tonight, for example, I never know what the audience is doing while listening to the program. But they call me sometimes, or they see me in the street and say, well, some of them will be home, for example, ironing clothes or getting ready for the next day, especially around this time of the year. It's daylight saving time has a positive impact on the program because it gets dark earlier. And so people are then people are inside early on a Sunday. And so they do all these things. Sometimes some people just sit off and prepare for the show. Others are driving a taxi while they're doing it. So I try to give everybody a flavor that if you have a young person in your life, whether it be a child, grandchild, just a friend, a child, to have them get a sense as to what it is that inspires children. And in this instance, it is, whatever the child likes to do as playtime almost, encourage them, because it may end up in a career as it did for each of you in some
Correct.
respects. You know what I mean? So you was, let's go say somebody bought you a nice game, a very interesting and challenging game that led you to become a pilot and then into other things. And for you, it was a matter of you liked the idea of being transported. So everybody happy to get on the bus. Some children don't like to get on the bus. And then guess what? You just made the connection between a bus and an aircraft, and that an aircraft is a flying bus within reason.
That's why they call it Airbus.
Airbus.
I got you.
Yeah. What a good.
So thank you for that. Now, let's come into more of what we're going to talk about tonight. And that is, what is the Bermuda Aviation Authority? What is it? How does it came about? All these kind of things.
First of all, it's the Bermuda Airport Authority.
Oh, sorry, what did I say?
Aviation.
Oh, sorry. No worries.
So the Bermuda Airport Authority is the governing body that provides oversight of the project agreement. The project agreement is a contract between the Bermuda government and Skyport for the operation of the aerodrome. So it's not just the airport, which a lot of people notice or would refer to as the passenger building, the airport passenger building where they get on and off the commercial planes, but it's the whole airport itself. So the aerodrome. So the airport sits on about 10% of the actual airport lands. So crash fire rescue sits on it, and it goes from the roundabout just when you cross the bridge all the way over to Clearwater. I want to say it's a couple hundred acres of land.
It's about 600 acres.
Yeah, about 600 acres of land. And that's what the Airport Authority provides oversight for. So we have both the Skyport who run and operate the aerodrome, but we also have direct responsibility for airfield lighting, ATC, crash fire rescue, and why do I feel like I'm missing something? Aviation weather.
Bermuda Weather Service.
Bermuda Weather Service. Hence the Doppler radar that came under us, and everything else. And so that is what we do in a nutshell.
Okay. Sorry. Very often the guests, they use these words, and because for you it's automatic, right?
Okay, yes.
And the listener or does not understand sometimes me included. So what is the actual aerodrome as distinct from the airport?
So the aerodrome is all of the airport lands together. The airport is mainly the passenger building. Okay. So the airport does not necessarily include the runway, the taxiways, or the hangars. Or crash fire rescue. It doesn't include air traffic control, ATC, aviation weather. All of that is consisted in the aerodrome.
Okay. And so for the listening audience again, the Skyport are responsible for what?
They are operating the aerodrome.
Okay.
We provide oversight to make sure that they are honoring the obligations under the project agreement.
Okay. And so by way of an example, I guess, would it be that the Skyport are the tenant at the airport and you are the landlord?
Correct.
Okay, good. And so that hopefully gives us a good idea then in terms of a reference point to talk more, because the next question is going to be, what do you have to do as a landlord as compared to Skyport being the tenant to try to understand what I think the official term is retained government services?
Right. Anthony, before we get into that, I mentioned, obviously, I think everybody knows that the U.S. Navy used to run the airport up to 19. So obviously, Bermuda. and the significant infrastructure of an airport, of an aerodrome, as Lauren said, was built for us by the Navy. That's why we have one of the longest runways in the region. It's about 9,000 feet. Typically, if we had to build that runway, it would probably only be about maybe 7,000 to 8,000 feet. The U.S. Navy and NATO and so forth built the runways, extended it in the taxiways over the years, and they built that large hangar as well. So what the government was responsible for, or has been responsible for, is the actual passenger terminal, right? So that's the passenger-facing part of the airport. Because most people know that a runway is there, but they don't walk on it. They don't know what's involved in it. But everybody goes to the passenger terminal. So the passenger terminal for us started with the little buildings, right? Some of them are still kind of there on where the old terminal is.
Southern side, yeah.
So essentially, I mentioned earlier, the big change for the government was back in 1995 when the Navy withdrew. So at that point, the government was responsible for the entire operation of the airport. It wasn't just the passenger terminal buildings. It was the runways, the taxiways, and everything. Then fast forward to 2017, and I know you want to talk about this because you had it in your intro, there was a huge change in the operating model of the airport where this private sector party, Skyport, was brought in, right, to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain the primarily the airport terminal, which just had its 5th anniversary last month. From 2017, it was 30 years. It'll be 21 years from next month.
For finishes?
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I tell you, there's 9 years behind us.
Sure.
So what did this arrangement mean? The government retained ownership. Okay, so the government has always been the owner, even going way back from when the U.S. Navy built it. Yes. Just that it was leased. So it was leased to the Navy up until 1995. Then the government had direct control between 95 and 2017. It's now the airport lands are now leased to Skyport. It was for 30 years from 2017. It will be 21 years, I should say, from next month. So they are the tenant. They are now operating the airport terminal and the runways and the taxiways. So when anyone travels from Bermuda to New York and back, every aircraft operator, every pilot receives instructions from an air traffic controller. And I think most of your listeners would be familiar with what an air traffic controller does. Bermuda Airport Authority provides the air traffic control services, right? So the 10 air traffic controllers who provide safety, frankly, instructions to aircraft to land, to take off. They give them clearances, so whether they're clearances for flight over to London or to the Azores or to any of those points in North America, and now so a few points down south, those instructions are given by the Bermuda Airport Authority air traffic controllers. So we just, last year, we recruited 5, we call them ab initio, right? Meaning they had no training and background at all in air traffic control. We hired them out of a pool of 100 candidates. We hired 5.
So 100 people applied, Bermudians?
It was actually over 100.
Wow.
Okay, yeah, okay. That's the number that I use formally, right? 100 applicants for 5 positions. 4 of them were just certified. It's about a 10-month process of training overseas and on island. 4 of them were just certified to be licensed or certificated air traffic controllers. We're having a ceremony later this month, at the end of this month, right? And the minister is going to be there, and we will invite the press and their family out. So we train young Bermudians, all Bermudians, 2 ladies, 2 guys. There's one more who's the start of his training was delayed. He's traveling this month, and he will certify later this year.
Okay.
Right? So the air traffic controllers work for us.
Okay.
The other employees who work directly for us, who all Bermudians will be familiar with, are the Bermuda Weather Service staff. So these are forecasters, meteorologists. That's the official term. And also there are meteorological technicians. The difference is that the technicians do the hourly observations. So there's a requirement that every hour they go outside, they see what the sky condition is, clouds, wind, rain, temperature, all right, recorded. It's kept in the database that goes way back to the 1940s. It's called a climate database. So that's what the meteorological technicians do. The forecasters are forward-looking.
Okay.
They're the ones who will give you the weather 2 to 3 days out. All right, that's a much more of a science to actually do that forecasting. So we have about 13 people that work in that area between the management and the staff. So they are all the Airport Authority personnel. There's a lot of technology down there.
Yes.
All right, think one common digital cell on steroids.
Okay.
All right, in terms of, and the reason I say that, while it's similar technology, it's regulated. All right, so when you have an instrument landing system that guides an aircraft safely down to landing, it has to work precisely.
Yes.
And I don't think I need to explain what would happen if the signals are off. It could be quite devastating.
Yes.
So the training for that is very significant. So we have there's about 8 folks who work in that area, right? So we provide our employees the air navigation services, very critical, very experienced services, the weather services, Bermuda Weather Services. They operate the weather radar as well, and as well as the technicians who maintain all of that.
Okay. Just a quick question. So you said there are 10 air traffic controllers.
There are 10, yeah. There's a workforce of about 10.
About 13 in the weather service?
13 in the weather service.
Okay.
And there's going to be 10. We just hired a trainee, what we call is air traffic engineering. These are the engineering technicians who maintain all of the technology at the airport.
And they're separate from these guys? That's a different team altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's the third team. So we have 3 kind of operational teams. Right?
Sorry, what's the third team called?
Well, there's ATC,
Yes.
Air Traffic Control.
Yep.
There's Bermuda Weather Service.
Yes.
Right. So there's a direct operational service units, and then you have the technicians, the engineering technicians, who maintain all of that technology and that infrastructure.
Okay.
All right. So that's the third significant team.
And there are how many of them?
There's the staffing complement is up to 10.
10, okay. Okay. Yep. You're talking about the staff. Keep going. I interrupted you.
Right. So there's that, and then everybody else is support. Right. Of course, you have our finance team, you have our HR team, you have our administrative teams to support them as far as infrastructure as well, because we're in buildings, right? So there's your standard building services, your HVAC, your electrical, your carpentry, your masonry, and so forth. So we have to make sure that the the workspaces are comfortable.
Okay. So the total, you got 13, 10, and 10. So about almost like, was it about 40 staff altogether?
Exactly. It's about 50, but we have a hiring limit up to 60, right? Now, you might say, well, geez, where's that other 10 coming from?
That's
right?
Exactly my question.
So, right.
And I know it's a bit detailed, but I want us to understand what does the Bermuda Airport Authority do? Completely.
Okay, right. So those services that I mentioned to you just now, they are essential services.
Yes.
All right. So let me just speak about just air traffic control. It's regulated, right? So the regulator said to us a couple of years ago, there was a new regulation. So the regulator is the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority, right? It's also QUANGO. It's a sister QUANGO. They're under the same ministry as us, but they regulate us. We operate, they regulate.
I realize. Okay.
So they come to us, say, "How you guys doing?" I said, "Well, your air traffic controllers need to have a minimum rest period in between shifts."
Yes.
Right. So when we worked out the numbers, it essentially meant that we had to hire more air traffic controllers.
Okay.
All right. And so let me, I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. American Airlines comes into Bermuda in the evening. Often, maybe once a week.
Yes, we understand.
They operate late, and there's a reason why.
Everybody knows that from Miami, especially, it's always late.
Miami and Bermuda Air.
Bermuda, yes, yes.
Bermuda Air's issue was primarily up until last year. They had 2 airplanes.
Yes.
So if they had disruption and delay in one, it just messes up the whole system, right? American, like the 3rd largest airline in the world, has many more aircraft. but their pilots have duty limits
Yes.
as well, right? So if a pilot is scheduled to fly to Bermuda, that pilot, if the delay is more than 1 hour, they would be over their duty limit,
Okay. Yep.
right? So there's a lot of complications. So anyhow, we have a choice in Bermuda. If American or Bermuda Air comes late, and if our air traffic controllers have to rest, we could say, sorry, the airport's closed, come the next day. But no, we don't do that, all right? So we've hired and trained some more air traffic controllers. The normal shifting is from 7 in the morning to 11 at night, but we can keep them on to about 1:30 in the morning.
One shift?
No, it's two shifts.
Oh, two shifts.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah,
not-
yeah.
okay.
So what we do actually, there are periods during the day where it's fairly busy. Let's say from about 11 o'clock to like maybe 3. So we have 2 on during that time.
Okay.
Right, and we're actually operating different shifts, and actually strike that comment.
No.
Let me go back. We used to do that. So what we do now is we have 2 staff on from 7 in the morning. Well, there's 2 shifts, right? So it's 2 per shift. And the reason we do two per shift, because if one is sick, right, you can still operate safely with 1.
Okay.
All right. Whereas before, what we used to do, we would have a shift of just 1, and if somebody was sick, you would call somebody in. But now with the regulations, that person who's at home needs to be rested. You cannot have consumed any alcohol, frankly, within 8 hours. So even though you're home and you could be called in, it's like you're on a shift. All right. So we came up with a system, the better ways, like you have a shift of 2, they get to learn from each other. All right. I mentioned the new air traffic controllers who are more junior can learn from the senior ones. So it's all about ensuring that we can provide the service for our airline customers.
Okay.
Right. So American, rather than tell them, especially American, Bermuda Air, sorry, you have to come the next day, and then all of their passengers will be very upset.
Yeah.
Which they are.
Yes.
Right. We actually do what we can do to actually provide the service, even when their schedule is operating late.
Okay. And so just to be clear, so now is it correct that there are always 2 people physically in the tower? Or 1 person in the tower, 1 person at home on short notice call?
No. So 2, in terms of the rostering, what time is it now? Right now, right?
Yeah.
The 2 will be rostered to work. Okay, during the shift right now. There'll be 2 there right now.
Okay.
And there's administrative work to do.
Sure.
But by having 2, it's a mitigant against someone who's not available to work.
Understood.
So remember, in terms of being an air traffic controller, if you have a headache or if you have any type of illness, you have to self-ground.
Yes.
All right, because air traffic controllers are required to hold and to maintain and medical and aviation medical.
Okay.
So it's the only positions we have in our company that requires that. So sometimes you're not feeling well, you have a headache, you come to work anyway.
Yes.
No, as an air traffic controller, no, you need to feel mentally and physically fit all the time, just for the safety of aviation.
Yes.
You don't want, when you're giving instructions to an airplane at British Airways that's carrying 200 people, everybody's got to be on their A game in terms of their fitness, the pilots and the air traffic controllers.
So does that then adjust in terms, just as a quick point, does that adjust in terms of the sick allotment? Because normally in a job, for example, you may have, say, 2 weeks sickness or whatever, and 8 days unpaid sick. How does that work? Does it change for yourselves? If it's so critical, does it change your flexibility around sickness?
That's a good point. It hasn't been a problem, to be honest with you, with regular sickness, right? Where it has been a problem is if someone has a significant medical issue.
Yes.
Right, that essentially would require them to be grounded for many months. So we've had that, right? Now, we have very good insurance in terms of our, and it's not part of the government's GHI. We have our own insurance with All Shores.
Okay.
Yes, that company. And so we have a good insurance package, and that's for all employees, right?
Yes.
And it includes short-term disability, right? But then when that runs out, there's long-term disability.
Okay.
Right. So we've only had a few instances. I can only think of maybe 2 in 9 years where we've had to use the long-term disability.
Okay.
And so once that's exhausted, I think long-term is about a year or something like that. And then it becomes challenging because you have to meet the medical standard. And this is only for the air traffic controllers, right? You have to meet the medical standard to be able to perform the job.
Gotcha. Okay. So good evening again to the listening audience. Thank you for joining us here on Metro 2.7 on your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight, the first program for the year. Our guests this evening are from the Bermuda Airport Authority, the chair, Mr. Lawrence Scott, MP Lawrence Scott, and the CEO, Mr. Lester Nelson. You might not necessarily recognize their voices, but we've been talking about the role of the BAA, I call it BAA, in terms of how it operates, and quite interesting to find some of these facts that I was not aware of, and I think others might not be aware of either, particularly the detail around the air traffic controllers, and the fact, you haven't said this, but you haven't said it blatantly, I guess, but you are trying to, what I'm receiving from you, by the way, is that the majority of your employees are Bermudian.
That's correct.
And as you carry on and train, and so there's been quite a significant effort to get Bermudians. And I do know that you just said that there are 4 new traffic controllers, air traffic controllers, and 1 more person to be qualified or to go through the process. And it takes about 10 months, you said?
Yeah, it's about 10 months.
Gotcha.
I think I don't have the exact time.
That's fine.
Here, but the training organization that we use is a school in Gloucestershire in the UK in England, and they spend about 6 months out there.
Okay.
And then the other, 5 months or so is on-the-job training.
Okay.
Here, back in Bermuda.
What would you say is the core skill set for an air traffic controller? What do they have to have? Is it going to be like a mathematical background? Is it going to be a social background? Or what would you say, if I right now, I want to apply to be an air traffic controller, for example, what would you say is my core skill set that's required to get me into one of the 5 of the 100?
I would probably say, skill set. That's a hard one because air traffic controllers it would fall under one of the sciences. It would be it'd be like a STEM course. So if you're good in science, technology, engineering, math, that would be a plus.
Okay.
But that's not a mandatory thing. It's actually, there are a lot of assessments that are done. And so you've got to be able to work well under pressure. You've also got to be able to work by yourself and do multiple roles.
Okay.
And so you have to be able to multitask. You have to have good communication skills. In aviation, you have to be able to read and speak English, as English is the official language of aviation worldwide.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah. And so these are just some of the core things you end up getting into math, but once again, because you're vectoring people, a vector is when you're telling them turn a certain heading, turn 220 degrees, then for 5 miles, then turn another 75 degrees, or so you're vectoring them in to the runway or into or out of the airport environment. Because there are times when pilots will be flying in IMF, intermittent meteorological conditions, IMC, sorry, conditions, when that means they can't see the ground, they can't see anything outside. When you're flying in a cloud, all you see is white or gray, or if it's at night, you just see the flashing strobe lights. And there are times that the air traffic control will have to vector you around, and so they have to sort of know geometry. This will make it sound a little intimidating, but calculus, trigonometry, and physics.
Oh,
Because you've got land-based trigonometry comes in when you've got a distance across the ground. So you've got the end of the runway, you've got a middle marker or an outer marker, and then you've got altitude of where the aircraft is, and it's tilted down, and so you see the triangle. But once again, you sort of learn all this. It becomes second nature. It's not really scholastic.
Okay.
Meaning, no one's just gonna, when you're on the day, no one's gonna say, solve for sine or cosine.
Okay.
You just know, okay, this is happening. This is gonna happen.
People were
rules that are available in aviation generally, and then what is the BAA doing going forward? In terms of, I think Lester mentioned the idea of you had a strategy done that are available in aviation generally, and then what is the BAA doing going forward? What it is that you want people to know? Lester mentioned the idea of you had a strategy done.
So the BAA is looking to create a pipeline for talent.
What it is that you want the public to know?
That means, and once again, the unapologetic. So the BAA is looking for Bermudian talent to bring into our organization on a consistent basis. And so this means we'll be reaching out to the schools, the primary schools, trying to attract and inform, motivate, and inspire children 12 years, even possibly even younger than that, and into motivate the sciences, into aviation, children, so that they can understand that once again, if they come into the BAA, they can go to all of these different facets. So we do have partnerships with overseas entities in the United States, in Canada, UK, these different facets. And even we do have partnerships with Dubai. And so what we're looking to do, and we understand that it is, and I think it's already happened to us, that we've sent people overseas for training and experience. What we're looking to do, and they've never come back because they then get offers out there sent people to go into the industry and other areas. And they've never come back because they then get offers because we're being able to open up into the industry and other the exposure that myself, Lester, and other pilots or aviation enthusiasts we're being able to open up that we're looking to create that so that you know that other pilots. When I said I wanted to be a pilot, didn't necessarily have circles. We're looking to create that so that it wasn't that and always when I said I wanted to drive a boat, we always automatically went straight to marine pilots, not aviation. It wasn't and always. And so what we want to do is have that just as common. We always automatically went straight to marine pilots. Which one? At least that question is asked first. And so what we want to do is have that just as common. If they continue to go into aviation, they start realizing that. There's an accounting side to aviation. There's a legal side to aviation. If they continue to go into aviation, they start realizing that there's an accounting side to aviation. We can all go back far enough to, and we remember the meteorologists that were on the weather people on the news were Bermuda. I think we can all go back far enough. So they would have come under the meteorologists right now on the and so it's these type of things. Airfield lighting. So if you're into if you're an electrician, they would have you can go into airfield lighting. Airfield lighting also goes into the radar system, the Doppler. Electrician, you can side of things. You can go into the weather radar that everybody sees. Also goes into on our internet page, which is weather.bm. So therefore, we have the weather radar that everybody sees. Web designers on our internet. You see where this goes page, and it can which is weather.bm. And so therefore, we have everybody from every facet. You see where this goes. An administrative or corporate background. It just filters aviation, but it's aviation specific. So we have everybody.
And so you would want to, you being the BA, would actually try to hire young people, I'm asking.
We're already doing that, yes.
And to go into either of these fields.
Correct. So what we're doing now,
would actually try to hire young people, I'm
not just already put out recruitment.
To go into either of these fields.
Continually have people interested and creating that pipeline that not just have put out recruitment to keep coming to us. And so we're creating the opportunity for them to work and creating that. But we also need to make sure that we don't have a supply and demand situation where we have demand for Bermudians but no supply.
Okay.
But we also need to trying to create that don't have that supply and demand balance where so that Bermudians know and they always think about it as one of their possible career choices.
Okay, because that's what I was getting at. You're not going to hire everybody because you can, but you can have just create the buzz I guess like in the school system now have a that's what I was getting at. You're not going to hire everybody for aviation, but you can have
so
create the buzz I guess like in the school system now have a trend or if you will for aviation.
Correct.
Well, yeah. So we civil aviation. In addition to the there are the airlines. There's not just Bermuda Air. I also mentioned to folks that now that most Bermudians have the right of a vote in the UK, so you may decide to go work for British Airways or go work for Heathrow. I also mentioned to folks that now what Lawrence is saying is that we're going to move from just a focused recruitment and hiring for just the positions that we have, and when we have those positions, we're going to move into a broader kind of aviation training knowing that ideally we would have a pipeline available for people to come work for us. But if not, we're okay if they go work locally, definitely, knowing in one of the other aviation areas. But frankly, even if they go and work overseas, I mean, we had one of our meteorologists a couple of years ago. We trained him up. He worked for us for about 3 years. He now works for a major airline in the States as a in-house weather forecaster. And we're really happy for him, right? So that's one of those, situations where we are okay, and we're really happy for him, right? So that's one of those, situations where we are okay that if we don't have a position at any given time, that if they go work for someone else. Now, this is not going to be that extensive training that I was mentioning in terms of going overseas for 10 months. That's only for the people that actually work for us.
Yes.
This will be more of the baseline training, right? That would help them to get that first job, whether it's with us or whether it's with one of the other organizations that I mentioned.
Gotcha. And you just mentioned the Skyport again. What would you, or not what, that's one word, but how would you describe the relationship or interaction between yourselves and Skyport? Because, let's face it, as I said in the PR this week, there was a lot of contention, I would say, to start off with, which is not directly your responsibility, I suppose, but just how's it going? How's it working in terms of the relationship between the two of you? And also, a big part that we haven't talked about yet is the overall idea of the development of tourism and transport and visitors to Bermuda from your perspective.
So at the relationship between the BAA and Skyport is symbiotic. We work very closely. We talk to each other very often. I would argue to say, and this might be somewhat of an exaggeration, that Lester is talking to Aaron Adderley, the president, on almost a daily basis.
Okay.
That might be a little bit of an exaggeration.
Weekly, okay.
But yeah, I would say weekly easily.
Sure.
But it's non-contentious. It is just a professional, courteous relationship. Now, moving on is, what was the other question?
The whole development of tourism and transport. Because isn't there a team that goes overseas or does some things or service?
And we do have air service development, basically committee, which is ourselves, the BAA, Skyport, and the BTA. The three entities work together to look to increase and at least maintain, but preferably increase aviation activity or air routes to and from Bermuda. And that is something that, once again, that shows how closely we work together. That is going well. As you can see, the tourism numbers are going up over time. They may not be where our brothers and sisters to the south of us are, but because you've got Dominican Republic that's doing 10 million visitors a year, you've got Jamaica that's in a couple of million. But once again, larger landmass, basically more entrenched tourism focus, and their budgets. The Bermuda government's budget as a total is almost what they're spending on just tourism. And so their budgets are a lot bigger and a lot deeper, so they can have a lot further reach. But we are making significant strides. As you can see, we've had new airlines, new air routes, and there's been marketing support for Bermuda Air. There's been all the support that we can give the home court, to give Bermuda Air the home court advantage. All that support has been given as well. So I think that the proof is in the pudding.
Gotcha. Excellent. And one quick question or quick comment, Abbas, is that Bermuda Air, how does the name, some people actually confuse it, or they call it Bermuda Air as opposed to Bermuda Air. Would you, when they are referred to as Bermuda's airline, is that accurate?
It is not an official. So there are two types of airlines. There's a national airline, Cayman Air, Bahamas Air, and then there are flagship carriers, British Airways, American Airlines, where they have the name of a country or the country in their name, but they're not associated or representative of the government or the culture. So they are not the official airline of Bermuda. They just happen to be a flagship carrier, so they carry Bermuda's name in their moniker.
And did you have to get permission? UBA permission for that?
No.
What's your process do in terms of, or is there a process, I guess, for them to be, I guess, licensed to use the name or to become a flagship carrier?
So no, you just make sure, it's just like a company, make sure nobody else has it. So when it comes, this would come sort of outside of the Bermuda Airport Authority remit and start to get into the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority. So the Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority is more like the FAA, the regulator of who can fly in, who cannot fly in, who is permitted. So any licenses, any licenses that are needed, certifications that are needed, proof that you can fly or that you can operate, all of that is from Bermuda Civil Aviation Authority. Once you get that, then you start to come underneath us, meaning that you'll be flying into and out of our aerodrome. And so therefore, the Bermuda Airport Authority, sort of in conjunction with Skyport, is then just monitoring that.
Okay. And can you either of you give us an idea as to what's required to have a new air route? For example, well, recently, there have been more and more coming from down the Caribbean, or from down south, that's for sure. What is that process so that people understand what's required? Or how can you assist in that?
Well, I mean, Anthony, the main thing is the demand, the passenger demand drives the airline decision-making in terms of where they're going to fly, right? So if there was enough demand in Japan, for example, there would be a flight that would fly from Tokyo, even if it was once a week, to Bermuda, and it would be purely demand-driven. Now, there are some regulatory requirements behind the scenes and these bilateral agreements. So Bermuda does come under the UK.
Yeah.
Right, in terms of bilateral agreements with other airlines, countries, I should say, right? So, there's a bilateral, which happens to be called the Bermuda II Agreement, just a coincidence, between the UK and the US. There's a bilateral between the UK and Canada. So the US air carriers and the Air Canada operate under those bilateral agreements, right? British Airways does not need one, because it's almost like a domestic flight.
Correct.
From an aviation point of view, when they fly from the UK to Bermuda, they don't need any permission. But the important thing is the UK in recent years, recent decades, has not withheld the approval of a US or any other country's airline from operating in Bermuda. Right. That's just a formality.
But will they? Well, I guess I don't know if you can answer this question. What happens, though, for a European-based airline coming to Bermuda?
Okay, that's a bit different.
Okay.
All right, so that's where kind of protection is.
Let's say Virgin, for example. Virgin had want to come to Bermuda.
No, Virgin's UK. All right.
Okay.
Virgin's UK. But now, since the Brexit, right? If Lufthansa.
Yes. Okay.
Right, or Condor. Condor is a better example, right? Because Condor does fly over us down to the islands in the south with charters and things like that.
Yes.
So if we go meet with Condor, they're like, oh yeah, we could do a flight once a week out of Frankfurt. Yes, that would need a special permission from the UK, which they may grant or may not, because they may figure like, look, you're taking away business from British Airways.
Correct.
Or what they would usually do is if they had allowed that flight from Germany, Europe, right, to Bermuda, they would want something else in exchange. Right,
okay.
They would want British Airways or Virgin to be able to fly to some point within Germany or something like that. Okay, but the actual bilaterals is usually not any type of restriction on the flights that come to Bermuda. The biggest driver is demand.
Okay,
correct. That's like the 99%. Everything else is secondary.
And so if you look at speaking of demand, so looking at JetBlue, Delta, American, all those legacy carriers that fly to and from Bermuda, the Bermuda population, as much as we travel, constitute 0.1% of their total seat capacity.
Sure.
And the airlines will base their decisions on where, when, and how often to fly off of that seat capacity. So if you had any one destination that was 50%, 40%, 10% of their seat capacity, so like a JFK, a Miami, an LA, a Jamaica, a DR, a London, Toronto, those seat capacity percentages determine how often they fly. So when you start to see airlines removing seat capacity, meaning reducing their schedule to Bermuda, increasing their schedule to Bermuda, it is based off of that seat capacity in comparison to all of the other destinations. And so it's almost like a beauty contest every 4 months. Who is performing the best?
Okay.
And the better you perform as a country or as a destination, so actually not even a destination, as an airport, that's who wins the support of the airlines.
And so with that, this goes back to the air support development. It's, I guess, to be cynical, what hope does Bermuda have to encourage others to come, given that we are such a small percentage, no matter how good it is?
No, but see, the thing is that the magic number, if there was one, would be 1 million. Once you start getting into that 1 million travelers or 1 million seats per year,
Yes.
now you sort of end up in the A league. You're always considered. We can get there.
Okay.
We're going to have to be creative with how we do it, because we don't have the resources that the bigger destination. We don't have the budget for aviation that JFK has. We don't have the budget that Toronto has, and we don't have the hotel capacity that Jamaica has or that Dominican Republic has. So we have to get creative, and that is where the Air Service Development Committee gets together. That's the BTA, Bermuda Tourism Authority, Skyport, and the BAA, and that's where we bring all of our resources together, all of our knowledge together, and look at how we can make Bermuda shine or continue to shine as the jewel in the Atlantic.
And then that then begs, I guess, the obvious question. So what, from your perspective, is the expected impact of opening up the Fairmont Southampton, which is intended to start, I believe, the first phase of it this year, late summer, I think it is? Is it June?
Yeah, it's supposed to be later this year.
Yes.
So we, as Lawrence mentioned earlier, unfortunately, 5 years on from COVID, or is it good? This is the 6th year, I think, right? Bermuda still has not, in terms of air service, recovered to 2019 levels, right? I mean, that was a decent year in terms of passengers. So last summer we were at about 82%
Of
right, in
2019?
terms of passengers,
Okay.
right? Not seats, but the actual passengers who were flown to Bermuda. We're about 82% of 2019 levels. So the
just
biggest,
quick, just to be clear. So you're saying that in 2019, let's say there were 100, and now we're at like 82?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but let's
No, roughly, just
just roughly, right? So we're not at the same. We're at, for every 100, right? In 2019, we've only flown in 82 in 2026. And we're not expecting it to move too much, frankly, this year. It's not going to be 100%. The biggest bottleneck is the number of rooms, because we all remember that during the pandemic, most of the hotels closed, and some of them did not come back online.
Yes.
Fairmont Southampton didn't come back online. And some of the smaller properties,
Many of them, yes.
Beach went down. So there was a significant drought, as we all know, right, in terms of hotel rooms, coming back on slowly. So we're not going to get back, we feel, to the 100% or let's say 100%, until 2019 levels and beyond, until at least Fairmont's 600 or so rooms are brought online. Then, of course, there's a deal with Elbow Beach. So we're looking at maybe 2027, 28. There'll be some more rooms. But we're encouraged that, there's foreign investment that's still coming into the country that sees Bermuda as being attractive. But that's something that I think the government is working on with the different parties. But I'm going to bounce to something, because
Sure.
I know you have this question. I can see your little notepad there. Right?
I'm writing notes as you do.
So what was the impact of the pandemic, right? The fact that we're only at about 85%. How did it affect BAA? How did it affect Skyport? Frankly, we've had to pay Skyport under the terms of an agreement of about $50 million.
That's my next comment. MRG. Go ahead.
Right? Is the MRG, right?
Yes.
It's a guaranteed revenue payment, right? That we had to pay them I think we actually even paid one last year, strangely enough. For that, we actually were refunded back all that. But there was it was about 50 million in total, and that's a feature of the agreement. Is this very complicated agreement that if revenue targets were not hit, and no one envisioned a situation like the global pandemic, right? It was really put in there in case there was like just a recession, which would last one season. Nobody saw it going for multiple seasons. But we paid $50 million. We honored it, right?
Yes,
there was a legal obligation.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that came from the airport authority that we do in terms of the project agreement.
And so, let me think about this. Very often, sometimes it comes up in the discussions in terms of how do you support a new, sometimes a new airline or just a new service route. How do you think about that in terms of the minimum revenue guarantee, and explain to the general public how that works and how you decide yes, no, or maybe so?
Right. So let me.
And also, by the way, and then compare that to what you talked about just now with Skyport, because Skyport is the same thing.
Yeah. Well, this is so. You remember Skyport. Getting into the complexity of the project agreement, right?
Yes.
So a feature of this agreement, which is the 1,000-page document, I could go on all night about that document, by the way. One of the provisions is that the fees that every passenger pays in the ticket. When you buy a ticket, read the small print.
Yes.
You're paying about $160 in airport fees, whether it's Bermuda airport fees or fees in the States or in Canada, the UK, right? They're all broken down there. They are available for viewing on the Bermuda Airport Authority's website. Lawrence signs off on the chair, right? There's a requirement that we have to post them on our website.
Correct.
They're not on Skyport's website, they're on ours. And all of those fees, so if you multiply the number of the total passengers by those fees, go to Skyport. Right, almost all of them. We actually have one now. It's an air navigation fee, $3 per passenger, and that actually comes to us. But of the other 160 or so, well, not total, because some of it goes to the American airports, right? But that's where Skyport that gets the significant portion of its revenue from, all right, to run the airport, to pay for the capital, to pay their debt, right? Because there is debt that was a couple of $100 million. That was used to build the terminal building. All right, so it's the operating costs, it's the ongoing capital and life cycling. It's paying the debt, and it is a private company.
Yes,
they're not doing it for free. All right, so they have an internal rate of return, right? That typically, that would benchmark against what they could make in the market, in the investment markets. So when you add in everything, the regulated fees cover that, and there's a schedule that sets out how much the minimum revenue for every quarter, every 3 months for the next 22 years. It was basically for the whole 30 years, right?
Okay.
So every quarter, and at the end of every quarter, I just received a letter last week. They'll send me a letter, and they'll say, this is the revenue the actual revenue.
Cash.
Right? Well, it's you can call it cash, but they actually collect it from all of the airlines, right? So the airlines have to pay, by the way.
Yes.
And there was a situation last year that was reported in the paper where one airline, not to say its name, had some challenges paying, right? So the airlines actually have to pay Skyport, but if they don't, and if they fall short of their revenue target, we have to pay the difference.
Okay, and just without going too far, so in the instance whereby if one airline does not pay whatever they are supposed to pay, does government then have to pay effectively?
If they don't, so let's just say airline 123 owes $2 million, and they don't pay on that time, in time on that quarter.
Yes,
and that causes them to be short below the minimum revenue guarantee by, let's say, $500,000. The government would be responsible for paying that $500,000. But then once they got it back, if it's an accounting treatment, if it's a timing thing, then they would be over, and then we would get a refund. It is
okay. And so you do get the money back. Effectively, you cover the shortfall, and if in the instance they pay up, then you pay.
Right. So there's
without being too technical, but
just to be clear, right? So let's say I'm going to keep the numbers simple, right?
Sure.
So let's say if the schedule says that for the quarter ended March 31, 2026, that they will receive $3 million, all right, from fee collections.
Yes.
It means that it was $3 million of actual activity, right, in terms of passengers who paid, number one, and number two, the airline actually paid you.
Okay,
so
yeah.
two things have to happen.
Okay.
And paid you on time, all right? Now, if the airline does not pay Skyport, or they pay late or whatever, there's a shortfall, and let's say if it's only 2.5 million, we have to pay the 500,000 to make them whole.
Right.
Right. So we're kind of a guarantor. All right. You remember your banking days,
Yes.
right? So that's kind of built in. All of this, that's what makes this PPP, this project agreement, unique from a normal business, operation, right? So that's a feature that's in there. Not too unusual. The part that was really unusual was that you had this pandemic. So
Yes,
we had multiple quarters where we were having to pay. Normally, it would just be one recession or something like that. It's kind of a blip. So certainly created financial stress on the whole model.
Yes.
Not just for ourselves, but for them as well. Because remember, it's a minimum. All right, so we just pay up to the minimum, not the maximum revenue
And
target.
just one thing that Lester just said, he said PPP, public-private partnership. There is a manager that we have that manages public-private partnerships in BAA, and I defer to Lester, but I believe that the BAA has the only certified P3 manager on the island?
There's our former Jim, right? He's the former person, right? So there's essentially this is an example of how we give our staff basically world-class training, the best training to do their jobs, right? So this qualification, it's a certification in public-private partnership.
Yes.
But to make it simple, it's the equivalent of like an accounting designation, right? CPA, or an engineering designation.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. For sure.
It's a lot of work,
Yes.
right? It is a lot of work. And so Michelle Bean is her name. She obtained this qualification a couple of years ago.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
And and then, like I said, there's only one other person, but she's the only Bermudian.
Yes.
Which now means that at any given time, if the government was to enter into another P3, building a bridge, building another large-scale project, the government could come to BAA and say, hey, can we second her, can we borrow Michelle because of her certification for X number of days, months, or years? And once again, we have to plan for something like this happening, even though nothing right now seemingly on the table. But we create this pipeline where we have multiple Michelles in and around the airport authority so that we can then start making sure that the island and the country has the ability. And when we do it well enough, we could export this service to our other brothers and sisters in and around the Caribbean and in and around the world.
Okay. And again, that speaks to, and obviously we knew her, but it speaks to the idea that we can, in Bermuda, you can develop specialist expertise. And then, of course, the challenge for you as the employers becomes, guess what? I'm going to now leave and become a consultant, for example.
Correct.
I'll consult back to you, but my job is going to be others. And so, I mean, for me, that is the reality of us. And I spoke about this on many shows before in terms of the many good things that Kirby did was move us from being employees to be employers, or to start to actualize our own gifts and talents. And so many people now run their own business based upon, I had no job during COVID, I could do X, Y, Z, and now they do those things separately from having an actual job per se. And for me, it's a wonderful thing, like you said, in terms of pipeline. Then you have a pipeline of Bermudian entrepreneurs as opposed to Bermudian employees. And so,
Right, yeah. So we've advised you, I guess, in terms of everything that we do.
Yes.
In terms of, business continuity for the benefit of the country is very important, right? Because we can't just put our operations on pause, not even for a day, all right? Because it's going to affect everybody. So that said, succession planning and for the entire organization is important.
Yes.
Right. So while the minimum staffing in one of the areas that I mentioned might be about, let's say, eight staff employees, to maintain the assets with the shifts and so forth. We have an aging employee population, and some of the areas takes years, right, for people to develop all of the skills. So we'll be slightly overstaffed, right, just for the training cohort.
Yes.
Okay, for the younger generation. I'm saying younger, right? We hire people. We have one employee who's about 75.
Yes.
Right? So we have who's a well-known person.
Okay.
Very well-known and very experienced, right? But typically it is a younger person, and we, the transfer of knowledge. So we would have more staff than you would typically require, so that when when people retire. We've had every year. We've got at least somebody. We had one at the end of last year. The COO. We have a new COO, right? So he's going into he's transitioned from full time to part time, but then he'll be fully retired later this year.
Okay.
Okay. So we, in terms of what we do, we cannot have someone leave and then the position's vacant.
Yes.
All right. It could significantly disrupt our ability to be able to provide services. Right, so we have the younger folks, the trainees, who can develop over whatever period of time is required to get ready for retirement.
And speaking of that, so Lester gave a brief history of his role in the BAA, and I know Lester, worked with him long enough to know how modest he is, and hasn't told you that he actually took the BAA from an idea and a concept and turned it into what it is today as the actual authority.
Okay.
And when we talk about succession planning and people coming in and whatnot, this is where we look at. So Lester is looking at future, what's happening in the next 3, 4, 5 years from now.
Yes.
And is there a way that we can take these technically sound individuals and transition them into an environment that they love to come to? And I bring that up because when Lester started the BAA, its main purpose was to ensure that we had an airport passenger terminal building built on time and on budget. And built on time and on budget. That's been accomplished. And so now we're moving more from a project management role into that of a more regulatory, providing oversight, assisting in the air service committee and all of these things. And so now we have to sort of adjust accordingly.
Okay.
And looking at the environment and nurturing of talent, and once again bringing that talent in.
Excellent. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yeah, I'm thinking everybody's going to warm up in my hotel and put it open up. And the open up is complete, war about jam. The war about when construction going on, the planning department goes there every now and then.
Okay.
Everybody goes there. War about that, but when it's open. Don't keep on asking when it's open up.
Okay.
When it opens up.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, caller. The listener always will know the caller calls quite a bit, which is a good thing. He has comment there in terms of the Fairmont Hampton, when will it open, when will it open. My question earlier was about the impact which you've addressed, and so we can carry on. In terms of, you were saying about the BAA itself has moved from an initial project management orientation to now provide even more services on a more broad context.
More services, more often over a broader period, over a broader spectrum.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so once again, we want to let Bermudians know that if you are interested, and I'll narrow it down some.
Sure.
If you're interested in the science, technology, engineering, and maths, this is a place for you.
Okay.
Not just for a summer hustle, but as a career. You can move your way from entry level all the way up to CEO over the course of your career, and and provide a good life for yourself doing so.
Okay. Again, to the listening audience, thank you for joining us here on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening for another edition of Insight. Our guest this evening is from the Bermuda Airport Authority, Mr. Lawrence Scott, who is the chair, and Mr. Lester Nelson, who is the CEO. Lots of information coming out tonight, for sure. I mean, some of these things I almost like I should know, but I don't know, and so it's always good to ask questions so that we do understand. One thing I want to ask about is, I'm going back and forth a bit now, though, it's the fire service. Maybe 2 years ago, there were lots of questions and comments around the fire service, or 3 years ago, and you made the point that there is a separation between the fire service for the airport as opposed to the fire service for Bermuda. So
Correct.
Talk about that for a little bit, please.
So airport firefighting is unique to structural firefighting, right? So when you go in for, and I'm trying to keep it as generalized so a structural fire doesn't burn as hot. And
Okay.
I'm not saying
understood.
firefighters don't call in but it doesn't burn.
Primarily, less fuel there, for sure.
But jet fuel burns hot.
Yes.
And so you need to, and you're going to most likely have people in and around and running from, it's going to be a lot of chaos.
Yes.
So normally with structural fires, you have people watching and maybe one or two or three people trapped inside. In an aircraft, you can have a very dynamic situation.
Yes.
They use a lot different techniques and they use different materials. Foam is one of them. And one of the requirements, and I don't want to get quoted on to the second, but you have to get from the fire hole to anywhere on the airport in X minutes.
X seconds.
It's minutes.
It's minutes.
It's 2 minutes, right? So there's a standard, all right? There's a global aviation regulatory standard, which is about three minutes. But the actual recommended practice is 2 minutes, all right?
Okay.
So our regulator, rightfully so, holds us to the shorter time.
Yes.
All right, not the maximum time, right? So it's 2 minutes. So when the firefighters
120 seconds, yeah.
are in the fire hall,
Whatever they're doing,
maybe studying,
or whatever,
cleaning the fire trucks, doing whatever they're doing, right? Because remember, they do not fight structural fires. They're only there for one purpose. It's for aviation crash fire rescue, right?
And clarify that. So there are two separate teams then.
That's
so if
right.
there's a fire in St. George's, for example, they may leave from Clearwater, but it's not the same team that will have a fire, aircraft fire.
That's correct. But let me just roll this back.
Because that's very,
right?
I think it's very critical for us to understand that.
Right. So big picture, right? So I'm going to, again, talk about the period since the Navy left. Because when the Navy was here, they actually provided all of that.
Yes.
Okay? But from 1995, the government has been responsible. Initially, it was a private company. It was a company called Serco, right? That actually provided. It wasn't BFRS. It wasn't Bermuda Fire Rescue Services. It was a completely separate. You remember when there were different?
Yeah.
There was a volunteer fire department or whatever. And then I remember former Chief Holland said one of his big initiatives was to consolidate all of the different fire departments in Bermuda, Port Royal, the St. George's Volunteer, the Airport Fire Department. So that was done, I can't remember, in the early 2000s, right?
Sure.
Consolidated all of the different fire services into one. That still exists to this day. However, aircraft rescue and firefighting is distinctly different in terms of the whole approach. The agent, they call it, that they use is a mixture of foam and water, okay? And the trucks, you don't see those fire trucks on the road because they're too big, all right? They just bought some new ones, actually, right? You've seen that. There's 4 new fire trucks. They're still going through training on them right now, right? And they're very expensive. I think they were like at least $500,000.
Something
Close to $1 million each.
Okay.
So it's a different discipline, right? And it's so different that the aircraft rescue firefighters don't shift like even throughout the year, all right, to say, I'm going to go do structural firefighting. They have to kind of make a permanent change,
okay,
all right, because the type of firefighting that they do. Now, in terms of South Side, It just so happens that the East End base for the structural firefighting, all right, and the EMTs is based in the same building as where the airport fire department is.
Okay.
Right, which makes sense. All right, so if you're down there, you'll see the ambulance and the EMTs going out, and that fire truck that you typically see on the road. Right now, while they will provide support if there's an aircraft accident. Right, the main vehicles for the crash, fire, and rescue are those large, right, airport fire trucks, which are only used on airports. Right, it's a very expensive operation.
Sure.
Just one last thing. While the aircraft rescue firefighting is provided by Bermuda Fire Service, the legal responsibility is the airport authorities.
Because it goes to it's aviation related.
Because it's aviation related.
And what you might have been alluding to is that where we had the change in increasing manpower was that it's all goal oriented. So there's no legislation that says that you must have X number of people. It says you must be able to achieve this goal in this time.
Okay.
And it was then when we were audited, it was determined that we needed to increase the number of people and resources to be able to achieve the goal, the internationally recommended or internationally set goal.
Okay.
Right. And that's what happens with regulations, right?
Yep.
They evolve. So from 1995, I'll say we, the airport, right?
Yes.
with the partners, because remember, it was a private company initially, and then it was the Bermuda Fire and Rescue Services. We're using basically the same operating model in terms of the equipment and the resources right up until we had issues a couple of years ago. So let's say right up to 2022. I can't remember when it was, right?
Sure.
And then through an audit, there was just this one auditor, because you have different auditors, who had a more stringent opinion, a view of how many firefighters. We were always operating on the basis of putting the fire out, right? If there's an accident, you get the agent and the foam there within 2 minutes, and you spray it with these high-powered cannons, get the fire out, and then people with the flight attendants, they'll slide down the chutes, find their way out.
Yes.
That's shifted into a rescue component.
And
Okay.
and that came from, and if memory serves me correctly, there was an aviation accident incident in San Francisco
Yeah.
where it crashed, hard landing crash, and I believe everybody had survived.
Yes.
And they were coming out of the chutes. The crash fire rescue came in, and they started covering things with foam to prevent the spread of the fire, which covered people. And the crash fire rescuers accidentally rolled over and ended up creating the casualties.
Yes.
And so therefore, that investigation said, hold on, if we had more people or more resources, there's less of a chance of that happening, because one person isn't doing so many different
Right.
things.
Sure.
And not to talk about aviation accidents too much.
No, because they do happen.
Because they're rare.
Correct.
They are very rare still. A bit last year, but there was the accident in San Francisco, right, which was probably 10 years ago now.
Yeah.
There was the one in Tokyo, which I believe was last year, right? There was a landing where the Japan Airlines aircraft collided with an aircraft on the ground. There was an accident in Toronto in February last year. Important thing about all of those accidents, while the aircraft were completely written off, right? Either all of the passengers survived, right? But essentially, all of the passengers survived the crashes.
Yes.
Right.
Correct.
As Lawrence mentioned, the people who died in San Francisco, it wasn't from the crash. It was because the
responders.
The responders, they were in the field and it was an accident. So because these accidents are having a better survivability, the focus, Anthony, is shifting toward, you know what? There was a bad accident, there was a crash, but we need to rescue those people.
Yes.
We need to get them out. So we went through this the airport fire department with ourselves, testing and retesting regime, and it was called a TRA. It's a time resource analysis, And what it is like, okay, so you respond to the accident site within 2 minutes.
Yes.
You get the fire out within 5 minutes. Now what? You need to rescue people. You need a certain minimum number of personal people resources to carry large ladders and to stabilize those ladders up against an aircraft fuselage, right? So it's not like when you do work around your house, you can just carry the one ladder yourself. No, you probably need at least two, and that's where the numbers came from. So this changed overnight from us. So like, you don't have enough firefighters, all right? Now, the number of airport fire and rescue fighting services, personnel and resources that you need depends on the size of the airplane.
Yes, that's not the question.
British Airways has the biggest airplane.
Yes,
correct.
by far.
So we were able to very quickly address the minimum staffing levels and resources for all of the other airlines that fly narrow bodies, right? So these are the A319s, A320s, and 737s, the narrow body aircraft. British Airways is a big airplane, right? They needed the maximum resources for Category 9. That's why there was an issue where they frankly came very close to suspending their Bermuda operation until we actually fixed that. That didn't happen, right? And I have to say, look, kudos to the government, the minister. I think it was Minister Weeks at the time, right? The Minister Weeks, the Minister of Transport at the time, everybody, the Minister of Finance was on board and made sure that the funding was there, right? Because they had to bring in a lot of folks from Canada, all right, literally overnight, because they were trained up, and then they hired a lot of locals, right, to be trained up, and then now it's all Bermudians.
And the thing about this means that you could take any one or that group or that crew of Bermudian airport crash fire rescue, put them anywhere in the world, and they can perform at or above whatever their other counterparts are. And so that's what we want to show, that the Bermuda Airport Authority has, and Bermuda itself has, world-class individuals that are working, that are Bermudian first and foremost, unapologetically, that are Bermudian and performing at the highest levels and standards internationally or anywhere in the world.
Which is understandable, because clearly the airlines fly throughout the world, and so we have to be able to provide that same service. And so I guess just to reiterate the point that when we qualify, we don't qualify for Bermuda, we qualify for
international standards, yes.
Which is, I think, a very important point, because a lot of times we think of it as being just Bermuda, and not just in the fire rescue, of course, in almost all of the services, right? You have to provide a world-class standard, otherwise what's the point? And so that's what we're holding ourselves accountable to. But you had a point?
Well, yeah, no, we are very fortunate that we are served by, frankly, the largest airlines in the world. All right, I mean, the top three are Delta, United, American.
Gotcha.
Right. British Airways is certainly a top 10. You know, they don't have the big. I mean, they have a global network, right? But the UK in itself, as you know, is small compared to the States, right? So we've got, we've got the largest airline from Canada, the largest from one of the largest in Europe, the largest American ones. They keep us not in order, but we know, because we talk to them all the time, that if we were operating below their safety standard, that would not work for them.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Okay? And so there's never been an issue, except for that one issue with the fire department, for British Airways, where the airlines, any of the other airlines, they've never said, we don't feel safe coming to Bermuda.
And that raises an interesting point, because we take it for granted. Nowadays, you can get out of Bermuda almost anywhere in the world on any day. And how many flights do you guys remember? How many departures are there? So 14 departures.
Yeah, it varies. We're in a slow season right now. These 2 months, January and February, the two slowest.
Sure. But my point is that you can get from Bermuda to anywhere in the world on any given day, and sometimes on a short notice, right? But the point you made is important in terms of we take it for granted to some degree. Because what would happen, for example, if a British Airways said, "We're not coming to Bermuda anymore"? I think that point or that question, right, starts to raise the level of intensity that's required, and the value of what you provide as part of the whole airport infrastructure. Because if they said no, guess what? That's going to impact business and all the rest of it.
Well, again, the airport, right, in this current era is an essential. It's essential infrastructure.
Clearly.
Okay? While we bring in large goods by sea, it's not efficient to go to the States by cruise ship or whatever, right? The most efficient way is by airplane, right?
Yeah.
So it's very important that the airport authority works with its partners. Now, we've spoken a lot about Skyport, right? But we have a partnership with the U.S. FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration.
Okay.
Right. We have partnerships in Canada by way of Skyport's ACON. We have partnerships in the UK. We have partnerships in Dubai now. So the main objective, just to be clear, this a couple, but one is that the airport operates and functions 24/7.
Yes.
Okay. And we have to kind of predict failures and things that may happen that could affect the airport's operations. That's number one. Number two, it's the customer service.
Yes.
Right. So we're fortunate that we still have a newish airport, 5 years old. There was an award that Skyport won a couple of years ago for customer service. So customer service is not just a clean airport. It's the duty free, the food, and I know some folks have complained that it's a bit pricey.
Yes.
They're working on that, but it's available. We have a key feature in our airport. It's pre-clearance.
Yes.
The U.S. pre-clearance. And if you have the global entry, which anybody can apply for, that even makes it more efficient. On arrival into Bermuda, every Bermudian is eligible for enrollment into the e-gates. All right. So if you don't have that on your passport or something, go to the Department of Immigration and arrange that. So when you come back to Bermuda, you go to the e-gates. It takes less than a minute. It's seconds.
To the card, you put your passport.
That's where you put your passport onto the machine. Right?
Yes.
By the way, the airport authority was responsible for the procurement and installation of the e-gates at the airport. We did that. I traveled to the factory in Belgium in 2019. Yeah, that's right. So, and it's, again, for 5 years, it's been amazing. So the next step for the e-gates is to expand the enrollment to include non-Bermudians, right? So Americans and different things like that. Now, that's for the Department of Immigration. That's not for us, right? That's
But at this point in time, though, I'm asking the question, all Bermuda residents, all Bermudians, they're automatically part of the e-gate, yes?
Well, it should be automatic,
right?
But if you ever have a problem, right? I remember when it first rolled out, there was a problem, and they said, "Oh yeah, just go down to immigration and make sure that your name is on some list or whatever," right?
Gotcha.
So if you ever have a problem, just go to if they don't fix it at the airport, right? To go to the in Hamilton, and they'll make sure that you're in the database,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
But I have never, as long as the system's been working and it works 99% of the time,
Yeah.
my dad,
It's fine.
okay,
Yeah.
you never have to stand in line.
You just press the button and
You just, you may, even if it doesn't read it the first time, it never takes you more than a minute, right?
Okay.
It's an amazing thing. So the efficiency in the new terminal for local residents, I have to stress this, has improved significantly and outbound. And we're doing a couple of things with the security lines, by the way, too, because there's a little bottleneck there as well.
Okay. Good evening, caller. Welcome to
yes, good evening, Anthony.
Yes.
I'm so glad I tuned in tonight. Very educational program tonight, and I'm very impressed by the knowledge that your two guests have there. I was also very impressed by what I heard you say that some of the staff can go overseas to work anywhere in the world, and sometimes work to a higher standard than what is needed. That impressed me so much for the standards, because if they don't work to that capacity, I think I heard correct, like say that British Airways could refuse to operate here if you didn't meet a certain standard. Am I correct?
Oh, that's, yeah, that is absolutely correct. That's for any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. That impressed me very much. And the reason why I said that, the way how the airport is operating now, if we only could get King Edward Memorial Hospital to operate to the same standard, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That's my laugh for the night for sure.
But also, just to let you know that the airport authority does get involved and does participate significantly in conversations alongside that of the government when it comes to U.S. Customs and Border Protection.
Yes.
Where we take look, and also with Skyport, we also look at what needs might be coming down the pipeline. There was times where trying to get U.S. Customs to open sooner. Or earlier,
Yes.
and sort of try to get them to extend their dates, and these conversations are ongoing. I mean, it's things that the airport authority is doing, and even trying to get to make overtures and get consideration for Bermudians being able to enroll into the global entry system. These are the type of things that the Bermuda Airport Authority participates in on behalf of the people of Bermuda when it comes to overseeing all interactions in and around the airport. Once again, I'm going to go back to the 6th most popular website on island, which is weather. We've moved up to the 5th. We're in the top 5 now.
Sure.
Thank Lester just let me know that we're in the top 5 most popular websites with weather.bm. Yeah, because everybody goes there to look at their weather, basically and definitely around Cup Match. Everybody is going on there to see if and or when it's going to rain.
Okay.
St. George is going to use it as an excuse. But also it's these type of things that we do, and once again, these are the things we want to bring all Bermudians into, or at least let them know that they can participate, they can be a member of this team. At a moment's almost at a moment's notice.
Okay. So 2 things I want to do. Time is kind of tight, but I want to ask these 2 questions, and you can answer them at your leisure almost. One is to give us a more expanded idea of what happens with the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol in terms of how does it work. You know what I mean? You said there's a bit of a bottleneck in the morning time. How can you possibly adjust that, number one? Number 2, generally speaking, about the fees that go to Skyport as opposed to what comes to government. Because before, the fees went to government, and now they come to Skyport.
I think the easier one is to start to answer those in reverse.
Sure.
And I defer to Lester, but no money comes to government from the airport itself. It all goes to Skyport, except for the new fee that we are doing. So once again, the airport authority has a vision, and a vision is for us to expand the airspace in which we can control with the Bermudian air traffic controllers. As of right now, New York Oceanic basically controls most of the airspace and hands over for takeoff and landing. That's all our Bermudian controllers really control.
Okay.
And we're looking to expand that airspace so that we can then make money for all the aircraft, that the 200 some odd flights that fly over and within the vicinity of Bermuda. If we expand the airspace, we can get them to pay us for navigation services, and that could be a revenue generator. So we've started that, and we've put that fee on, and so that's the one fee out of, I think it's 25 cents.
It's $3.
Sorry, $3 out of that 100 and something that you will pay. That actually goes to the airport authority.
So it's like 3%.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so that fee, the intent of that fee is to help you to what? Hire more staff, or to increase the training, or what happens?
Yeah, so we're...
I'm sorry for listeners. I should have cleared my own interest, because I work in my private capacity. I always work. I work in the aviation industry. So,
right. So we haven't spoken that much about money tonight. Well, I guess we did, but not about our budgets, right? So our budget's roughly around $18 million. Okay. It's about $18 million a year, and that's for OPEX. It's from CAPEX, and it's for, we sometimes assist airlines with MRGs.
Yes.
We won't say which ones because that's confidential. We have a few right now, right? So all in, it's about 18 million. Now that does not include like that 50 million that we paid out over the years, because during those years our budget was up to about 30 million. Okay, but so the stabilized budget is around 18 million, which is not an insignificant sum. Right?
Yes.
So we are for the most part 100% grant funded. We get grants from the government. So when the government announces the budget, I think next month,
February,
in March, they say, Ministry of Transport, we're going to give you this allotment. The Ministry of Transport in turn gives some to us, to the other QUANGOs, his 2 others, right?
Yes.
And for us to operate. Okay. So we've had 6 clean audits, by the way. Right?
Okay.
So
congratulations.
Yes. Yeah. We've managed our money responsibly, because we are 100% grant funded. So the taxpayers regardless of how often you fly, right? It's not a user pay system for us.
Yes.
For Skyport, it is, right? Because the passengers pay for most of their operating revenue. For us, we get it from a taxpayer, whether they travel 10 times a year,
Sure.
or whether they get it once a year. We get it like that, right?
Yes.
So where we can, where it makes sense, we would like to introduce some user pay revenue. Okay.
Yeah.
To basically it would reduce the direct kind of payment from a taxpayer. Now we're always going to receive a grant, just to be clear, right? Because we can't
Generate $18 million.
Yeah, we can't generate $18 million, right, from fees for passengers. Not in the short term. Not in the short term.
Sure.
There are some initiatives I can't really speak to right,
Sure.
right now.
This is where we get creative.
That's
Yeah.
right. Because one of our initiatives, right, one of our strategic priorities is to explore revenue opportunities.
Yes.
Right. All I'll say is that most people know that there's that old passenger terminal building land. Right. We see
Yes.
that as an opportunity to sort of do something with Skyport.
But still, that space is still leased or under the control of Skyport, yes, under the agreement.
It is leased to Skyport for another 22 years.
Right.
So we're thinking, again, these plans are really looking for future forward focus, right? Number one. And number two, one of the parts of the old terminal building that impacts us is we're still paying like $3 million a year for all of the energy at the airport.
Yes.
That's one of the features in the project agreement. Skyport pays zero for its electric bill, right?
In total?
Correct.
I thought you
Zero.
contributed. They paid. Oh.
They pay zero, right?
So
That's how
Skyport has a zero Balco bill.
they have a zero energy bill. Right?
Wow.
We pay, the airport authority pays all of the non-concessionaire energy, right? So we pay for customs and US CBP and all of the hold space in the terminal, everything, right? The only energy that we don't pay for is like for the duty free and for the restaurants and for the FBO and things like that. Simply because those are commercial enterprises that are making profit, and that you need to build that into your model. But that's a smaller portion, right? We pay the significant portion, and that was all part of the deal, right? For the whole model to work, for Skyport to be able to make a profit.
Wow. Okay. That's a.
Right,
I mean,
so-
we hear these things, but we don't. I think sometimes there isn't clarity around that in terms of the. Okay, so your budget's 18 million. Sorry.
But this is where, once again, looking at the creativity and why we're looking to go to the primary schools now to get your 12-year-old. So in 10 years' time, they would be in our shoes. They're in the C-suite areas, and they're coming up with these solutions, these creative and forward-thinking solutions and whatnot. And so all of this is our push to let people know what we do, that we're here, what we do, the who, what, when, where, why.
Yes.
And why we want you to be a part of us.
And I'm going to come back to the point about the budget, by the way, but it is important to understand that if you don't have the next 20 people, for example, that's going to be in your employment, what happens to the BA? You have to bring people in, I assume.
Well, that's why we have this success.
I'm saying that because I want to make sure that we emphasize the significance of what you're talking about in terms of if you retire, for example, right, and there is nobody to fill your position, no Bermudian, you have to bring somebody in.
We're working on that.
But I'm saying, but it's a reality.
Yeah, no, so
as an organization.
And so where we are now is that we are in a position where we, the organization and the board, feel comfortable that we will not be in that position where we will not have a Bermudian ready to take the role of the person in front, ahead of them, in front of them,
Gotcha.
or more senior.
Okay.
What we're looking to do is make sure that we have a 2 or 3 generation redundancy.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking for. That's why we're not looking for next year. We're not looking for the next 5 years. We're good for that. We're actually looking for 6 years and beyond.
Oh, okay. Fair enough. Sorry, and to go back to the budget, Mr. Laster there. What is the chunk of the budget? You said you don't have to pay any more minimum revenue guarantees to, well, not no, but very little there is. But it's $18 million that you guys are spending.
Well, by the time you take out the energy
Salaries.
that I mentioned and the air service, that brings up to about 5. No, that's about 6. And then the capex. So between the non-opex, it's about 10. All right. So that puts our direct operations, at about 8 million or so, right? That's for paying, people essentially, right? People and resources and such.
Gotcha.
But like I said, the $3 million for the energy, which is the big thing. Like I said, some air service support could be like about $3 million as well. Capital this year's gonna be about 4, so it's 10 right there.
And so the Balco bill is about $3 million a year.
Yeah,
Roughly
it's actually the and I'm telling you
Just roughly,
numbers.
it's fine.
I'm telling you numbers that's from my annual report.
That's fine.
So I'm aligned.
Sure.
Right. So the way we've broken up the total energy, it's the subsidized energy, the energy that we pay, right? And then we have our own direct energy for our assets,
Sure.
right? So let's say the total is about maybe 3.5 million, but the 500,000 is for our direct
Understood.
spaces, and then the other 3 is for airport, like the airfield lights, for
Yes.
example. All of that that comes under us,
Okay.
right? So the other company collects the money, we pay the bills.
Gotcha. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Yes, good evening. So basically, what I'm made to understand, basically, you said the taxpayer pays for the energy.
Yes.
That's the bottom line.
Yes.
That is absolutely correct.
And also, we hear so many conflicting stories. Please explain who earns Skyport now.
Right.
Who are
So
the owners?
1 second.
Right.
So, okay, 1 second. So that's one question. Any other questions before I start to answer?
That's it.
Okay, so who owns Skyport? Okay, thank
right.
you.
So back in 2017, there was one company that owned Skyport. It's Aecon, AECON. Aecon is a large construction and infrastructure company in Canada. It's listed on the. It's a public company in Canada,
Yes.
right? So their information is all available. In 2023, Aecon sold 50%.
No,
It's actually
Just less
it was-
than 50, yeah.
It was
49.
it was 49.9%,
Yes.
right? So that they can continue to have a controlling interest, but they sold, more or less half to another investment and infrastructure company called Connor, Clark and Lunn, right? So, Skyport in itself, while it is a special purpose Bermuda company, and its owners are foreign, right? 2 foreign companies.
And the thing is about the project agreement is that had Skyport sold 50% or more, they would have had to get the agreement of the Bermuda government in which to do so.
Okay.
And so this is why, so if people ask why 49.9%, that's the most they could do without needing government permission.
Gotcha. And I think that speaks to, sometimes we don't have this conversation, right? But the reality is, as I think one of you alluded to, that Aecon is a private company. And they are in the business of developing infrastructure, aviation and otherwise infrastructure, but at the end of the day, they are a business. And so they saw the opportunity to sell out and make a big profit, but that's capitalism. You can't afford that.
Yeah, that was always part of the plan, by the way, right? I don't think it was ever intended that they would keep the interest for the whole life of the project agreement, right? The main thing was for them to actually build the new terminal building.
Okay. Sorry.
And then also one thing that the Bermuda Airport Authority is responsible for is in the event that something doesn't go right with this agreement over the next 21 years and either one need to have to exit the contract, that there is a contingency plan or there's a plan in which to do so. And I say that just for the COVID was an example.
Yes.
If we have another one, God forbid, or we have a natural disaster that does something and damages the airport to a point where Skyport and or its investors say, this is too much for us to take on, what happens then? And the airport authority is putting has a plan in place to be able to deal with that.
That's interesting. And there's the thing sometimes that we don't think about, the what ifs, in that if they decide for whatever reason just to pull out for whatever reason,
Correct.
Then we have to carry the airport cannot close in terms of that would put Bermuda at risk. So that's an interesting point that you made.
Yeah.
Hold on, caller. Good. Okay. Good evening, caller. Welcome to Insight. What's your question or comment?
Fine. Good night, Mr. Richardson and your guest.
Good evening.
I understand the budget was $18 million.
For the Bermuda Airport Authority, yes.
Yes. Well, 18,000 people divided by 52, you're coming out at about $19.230769, or less than $20 per person per week to get to $18 million.
Yes.
And it actually comes about something with $3 million. 3,000 people divided by 52 weeks again, $19.23769 under $20. You enter three with $18 million, you're looking at $21 million.
I'm not sure your question. What's your question, comment? Caller?
I'm making a statement, it's not a question.
That if you divide it by the population, you get down to $20 per person per week?
Not the population, Mr. Richard. You divide it by the number of people.
Yes.
18,000 people into $18 million.
I don't know what the 18,000 is.
You're an accountant. You should know that.
Thank you. But
I'm not being rude.
Hold on. Where are you getting the 18,000 people from? What number is that?
Look, $18 million.
Yes.
You take 18,000 people.
Yes.
Divided by 52 weeks, and you should get $19.237.
Yes.
Under $20 per person per week are 18,000 people.
Okay, I'm saying, but where you get 18,000
on your board?
My question is that why are you using 18,000 as people?
I'm just saying, at a minimum, 18. You should pay that off if you want to raise money as well, even a fund.
Oh, that's
the way you do it.
I got you. You have backwards.
Pay it off.
I got you. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And my other question is, I would like to ask your guests if they've ever read the document that was written in 1969 by Mrs. Dolores Block, not Brock, B-L-O-C-K. She wrote a book about the first 25 years of developing the airport years ago, including the U.S. naval property.
Oh, just got published recently?
I beg your pardon?
Somebody was
1969. Are you listening?
Yes.
In 1969, she wrote the article. I have the document in my possession.
Okay.
Sure,
The first 25 years of development the Kennedy Air Force Base.
Yes, I got you.
About the planes and the Cessna 78 that was assembled in Bermuda and that sort of thing. It tells you a whole lot about the hospital on the base and talk about the civil air terminal. I worked on the airport for 13 and a half years as a limousine driver, so I know that property very well.
Okay, I got you.
And at that time, you had Mr. Wing Commander Weir.
Yes.
And also his deputy, Mr. Jeffrey Osborne.
Right, and his son worked, Mr. Osborne's son worked at the airport for many years as well.
Right. I spent 13, it was my lifetime as a limousine driver.
Right.
Okay.
I would love to talk to you, Mr. Nelson. I would love to discuss issues with you.
Sure.
Sure, yeah, just connect us, Anthony.
Contact him at the Bermuda Airport Authority. What's the information there? What's your phone number?
I'll do that.
Okay.
And if you don't have that document, I'll run off some photocopies for you and let you see it firsthand.
No problem.
Absolutely.
And if you want, what you can do is to contact Mr. Nelson is to message me on 538-8683.
I have your number already, Mr.
Okay, yeah. So send it there and we go from there.
I'd like to deal directly with Mr. Nelson.
I will. I'm saying I'll give you this information right after that.
Sure. I'm contactable through our website as well, Bermuda Airport Authority.
But you have given a great deal of history. We need more people like you and Mr. Scott.
Good.
I'm so impressed with what's going on by listening to both of you. I'm so impressed.
Good. And this is our first program of the year, so thank you so much for that commendation.
God bless you.
Okay, thanks. Take care.
Keep up the good work.
All righty. Okay, bye.
So Anthony, we've gone through the whole night. You haven't asked us about our weather radar.
I have so many questions that I was trying to figure out. Right, is that well, you can talk about now because the radar obviously is important for the aircraft operate, right? The radar system, and every so often it goes out.
Right. So just to be clear, there are two different radars.
Yes, correct. I'm interested in that one. Yeah.
One is the aircraft radar.
Yes.
Right. That is used by air traffic controllers to see where an aircraft is. Right.
Yes.
There's a backup to it. All right. And there are procedures that are used all throughout the United States called non-radar procedures.
Yes.
Right. Essentially, what it means is that instead of aircraft being like a mile apart, for example, in the air, they need to be 2 miles apart.
Yes.
So when you don't have the radar, the separation increases, but you can still function. The airport doesn't stop, right?
Yes.
So unfortunately, our weather radar was down for about 2 months last year. It was from the end of October, came back online on Christmas Day.
Yes.
Which in itself was amazing. We got people to work on Christmas Day, by the way, right? They didn't tell us to wait until January. But aircraft was still operating. All right. So the weather radar, we understand the importance of it.
Yes.
And that's why we're doing everything that we can to improve the reliability. But it's actually not essential for aircraft to come and land, because it was down for 2 months, and then we would not have had any aircraft operations.
Right.
So I just have to be clear about that, right? But our goal is, notwithstanding whether it's used for aircraft or not, is for that weather radar system to be operating 95% of the time.
Yes.
Now, it's 6 years old now. Actually, it's in its 7th year. The fact is, there's really only been, all right, 3 major outages. In the first 6 months after it was installed, there's some issues. It didn't perform as it
Correct.
should.
Yes.
That was fixed within 6 months. Then we had basically about 5 years of the weather radar performing as we expected,
Okay.
95% reliability. Okay, so we were happy with that, and we provided the level of maintenance that was required for a high performing system.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we had an outage about a year ago. All right, which is about, I want to say it's about 3 months, right? That was not acceptable to us. And then we had the other one late last year.
Yes.
All right, so again, fortunately, it was brought back online Christmas Day. If you could hear the transcript of the conversations I had with people, you would know how firm I was on directing that system was brought back online.
Okay.
Right? So what are we going to do now? One of our mandates, I mentioned my $18 million budget, right,
Yes.
is to not have my budget grow significantly. But I am going to spend more money in the weather radar, just so you know.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Right? In terms of maintenance. So whereas before, we would try our best to fix the island with our own island resources. Okay? And then we would wait to call in the help from overseas. It takes weeks to get those engineers, have them available to fly over and so forth. And we would only do it when there was a problem.
Right.
What I've directed, I said, tell the engineer come back in March of this year, even if the system's working.
Okay.
All right, just as a mitigant.
Yes.
All right, and I just need to have the confidence, all right, that there isn't something else going on. So I'm actually going to pay. The airport authority is going to pay, I should say, right,
Yes.
for this engineer to come in, and he may not do anything.
Well, he'll check stuff at least.
It'll be, well, we have the on-island people to check, right? He's going to be like the Maytag man,
Okay.
just to be clear, right?
Okay.
But that's one of the things that we're going to do, at least for this next year, all right, to sort of have a resource available, even if it doesn't go down, right?
And it's also about building redundancy. Once again, we're looking at every possible option as to how we can ensure that we don't have it go down, and what systems can be put in place to make sure we have that added redundancy, so that if it does go down, then we have something to fall back on.
Okay.
And so that's what
Right.
we're looking at.
Right. So more significantly, now that's not the part that's going to be cause a significant increase to our budget. We are exploring the next generation of technologies, right? Weather technologies are not inexpensive.
Correct.
I will tell you that, right? So we're, in terms of redundancy and so forth, redundancy costs money, right? So we have one weather radar. Okay, I'm not necessarily saying that we're going to get another similar same, but we are looking to introduce another technology.
Okay.
All right, which again, it's not. We received some estimates and they're in the millions in terms of the cost, right? So we hear the public, right? I personally am a super user of the weather radar. When I get up tomorrow morning, I'm going to look to see if it's going to be dry for me to do my walk.
Okay.
All right, and I know that's how people use it. But, as I mentioned earlier, the taxpayers ultimately provide the budget, the grant funds for us. The public wants a weather radar that's working 95% plus of the time.
Yes.
And we promise you that we are going to deliver that.
Okay.
But it comes at a cost.
Sure. Okay. There's a couple of questions that came in that I've been trying to intersperse the questions as we go. There's a lot of questions. I'm going to try to just give you a flavor for these. It appears to be somebody who has, I don't know, I guess they must work or be aware of things. Let me think. I'll skip some. What is the authority's plan for the old terminal and property? Can you say what it is? I think you're hinting at it, but let's say what they are. Just actually hold it up and you can answer them all together. So what's the plan for the old terminal and property? When government gets the property back, what is the plan in that sense? What's going to happen to the will Skyport fall away, or what's going to happen to running the actual airport? And they just emphasize the fact that there are some new air traffic controllers about in 2021. Where are they at? Plus the fact you said just now that there are 4 new ones and 1 more person on the way.
Mm-hmm.
And just generally speaking, in terms of Bermudians, are the positions within the Bermuda Weather Service, air traffic control, and the fire service filled by Bermudians?
I'll go and answer them backwards, right? We do have a few folks on work permits in the weather office, right? But I will say that we will, I think last year or maybe 2 years ago, we trained and developed one of the weather observers, which is the entry-level position, into being a forecaster. All right, so it takes time. It takes a couple of years to get people ready. We are about to train in 2026 one of the Bermudian, right? Because this extensive training is only for locals, by the way. Right.
Yes.
Other than that, we hire people that have the experience in training.
Yes.
So we do have a few work permits in the weather office, but we do have development plans for Bermudians. I mentioned the air traffic controllers, right? We did last cohort who came on board in about 2021. All 3 of them have left the airport authority.
Wow.
One of them still works in aviation. All right, he works for a well-known company, right? But to Lawrence's point, we are okay we're very proud to know that we've given folks the opportunity.
That's good.
We've developed them, and that they're doing responsible jobs right now. They're not doing anything that no one would be proud of. I'm very proud of those guys. Being an air traffic control is not easy.
I can imagine. Okay. Very pressure field for sure.
It's a pressure field. It's not easy. You got to be there at 6:30 in the morning. You sometimes may have to stay at up to 1:30 at night. It's not an easy job.
And the thing is that having air traffic controller on your resume speaks volumes.
Right.
Yes.
And they're no longer at the airport authority because people saw how valuable and how well trained and how good they are. And so once again, we see that as a success. We want to continue to we have no problem bringing people in and having them poached off by other people. We would prefer that not happen, but we see it as success, meaning that we're doing our job well.
Good.
Yeah, and we typically don't get into bidding wars. All right, just on the margin. But let's say if someone wants to go for IB, I wish them well because we can't pay them IB level pay, right?
Okay.
The old terminal building, the plan is, obviously it's leased to Skyport for another 21 years. So anything we do, we're working closely with them. But we are aligned with Skyport in terms of turning that expense into a revenue opportunity.
Okay.
And there are a couple of things in play that we're looking at, right? The demolition cost, by the way, is quite significant.
Yes.
Like it's over 10 million, right? So we're looking primarily at a repurposing of it, right? And not having to demolish the whole thing. So I think I answered all the questions.
And I think, we'll get into
And they asked what happens to the airport in 21 years.
Yes.
Us. Yeah.
And so in 21 years, arguably, we would be getting the airport back in the same condition that it was as brand new.
Yes.
And this is one thing that the airport authority has to look for and make sure that we are ready to run the airport, run the whole aerodrome itself, and take over that certificate, meaning that the BCAA would have to be able to look at the government and say, hey, government, it's your airport now. How are you going to run it? And you have to prove to us that you can run this safely and within regulation. The entity that is primed for that is the airport authority.
Wow. Okay.
Because we have all the expertise. We have the air traffic controllers. We have the crash fire rescue. We have the aviation weather. And so therefore, we would then be adding the passenger terminal building to running it. So we just have to make sure that we're in that position in 21 years. 21 years sounds like a long time.
Yeah.
But when you come to planning for succession, that's just a week or two away.
Right, and just to add to that, right?
Quite interesting.
So the biggest risk which is behind us now with respect to the airport redevelopment project, was the construction of the new passenger terminal building, right? So that all-in $400 million project. The fact that the pandemic happened during the project, we all didn't know what that meant. Okay,
correct.
The project could have come to a halt, right? I mean, it could have ended up being like Morgan's Point?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We seriously did not know. So that risk was very scary, and the biggest risk that ended up being for us was the $50 million that we had to pay, right? Out. But other than that, de-risked in terms of the construction. We're in the operating phase.
Yes.
We ourselves now run a very complex operation, right? And frankly, Skyport does a great job, by the way, right? But our services, the weather and the air traffic control and the air traffic engineering services, those are very complicated, essential services, right?
Yes.
So we already have the management capacity to run a very complex operation. Right, so we'll just be expanding it to the whole airport, and that's what we'll be getting ready for in the future.
And saying that does bring a stark reality to the fact that Bermuda, the broader Bermuda, has to understand within 21 years, let's say within the next 18 years, to get the time right, we have to be prepared to replace or to augment the current services that exist at Skyport, whether it be to yourselves or the existing employees. But it's a significant thing to think about the fact that that is a certainty. Because Skyport will fall away.
Yeah.
So I think for the listening audience, for your children and your grandchildren, in that matter, it's understand that these are real opportunities. And it may sound like a long time, but it's not.
But as you said, the 12-year-old
Yes.
will be 22 in 10 years. That's 8 years prior to us having to be ready if the opportunity presents itself to take over the airport. And so therefore they would be just starting with the airport authority, let's say at 22 full-time after going through education. And then they would have 8 years of experience.
That's very, okay.
It's happened before.
Very
it happened in 1995,
Yes,
right?
correct.
When the Navy left, right? That was the big challenge. I was part of that cohort that started in 1995.
Okay.
That was huge. So it's happened before.
Yep.
Right? We built, with Skyport, that new terminal during the pandemic. We've gone through other challenges. So it's in the future looks good in terms of Bermudians being able to take over full operations and ownership of its one airport.
Gotcha. That is amazing. Let me just check the last messages before because believe it or not, everyone always says this, 1 second. Oh, the time, we're beyond 10 o'clock, by the way. Believe it or not. Okay, got all those questions. Got those questions. Just checking. Let's always real quick to make sure that any message you've sent in have been actually answered or addressed. And the answer is yes. Okay, got all the questions as it came in. Yep. Got all the questions. Yes, I did. Okay. So we are beyond that time, and I will give each of you a chance now to give any final comments that you would like. There are lots more stuff we could have talked about, but again, it's a question of how we go as a conversation, and so if necessary, or when the opportunity arises, we'll have you back, that's for sure. But do you have any closing comments?
Well, I mean, once again, our main reason and our main point is that we want to show what the Bermuda Airport Authority is. When people hear BAA, they think of the football team.
Yes.
We want them to now hear BAA and say, which one are you talking about, the Airport Authority or the football team? And if you're talking about the Airport Authority, I would want them to be able to list off just one or two of the opportunities that exist here. And we wanted to show how important this is and what we're doing now. I guess you could say it's a recruitment. It's a long-term recruitment phase, so that we want to ensure that Bermuda is in the prime position to have Bermudians at the helm when it comes to us taking over the airport at the end of this contract. And once again, we don't know what might happen, but we would want to be ready not just in 20 years. We want to be ready in 10, 15 years to be able, just in case you never know what's going to happen with global economy, with the things that we see happening internationally, down south, Venezuela, over to the east in Ukraine. You don't even know what's going to happen or what can affect us at any time, because we are a global community now.
Sure. Okay.
Just my last comment. I just want to say again, Anthony, thank you, and thank your listeners for joining tonight. I personally have been extremely honored to have worked for the Airport Authority for the last 9 years, and I've had a front seat to the development and building of this brand new terminal building, right, which is a generational building, right? First in our lifetime, and probably the last one that we're going to see in our lifetime.
Yes, for sure.
We've witnessed a new airline starting up, right? And I think it's just had its second anniversary, right?
Yeah.
It's a new airline. Okay, and it's private. It's 100% private. But just to actually see that, and there's with the Cessna that flies around the island, which Lawrence and I fly, by the way.
You fly? You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's just there's a resurgence, right? So what happened was there was a lot of aviation in Bermuda from like building up to World War II. Starting with Darrell's Island, then it built up, and then it really dropped off with all the military. Activity dropping off. Plus, the tourism is not as big today, let's face it, right, as it was back in the 80s. But we're seeing a resurgence. Aviation is growing, and it's just exciting, right? It's exciting for me, and I know it's exciting for a lot of my colleagues to be working in this environment. I get calls every week, and I meet with the youngsters who are in university or in high school, who are excited and who want to work in aviation, and I'm happy to give them give them some tips, some ideas, and some encouragement. So anybody who's listening, feel free, just go onto our website, Bermuda Airport Authority. You can usually reach me through that. And if you want to know more about us or anything in aviation, be happy to talk to you.
Gotcha. Okay. Kola, you have the chance to have our last comment tonight, but what's your question or comment?
Yes. You said that the Acorn filled 49%.
Yes.
The names of the London, whatever. But what are they, if you don't mind telling us? Are they Caribbean people? Are they Canadian people?
Yeah, the Canadian
Chinese people? What are they?
Canadian.
Canadian,
yes.
Well, ultimately it's money, so I'm not sure. But go ahead.
Pardon me?
They had the money to do so. And equities.
So there was a Chinese company that wanted to purchase, and it was vetoed by the Canadian government. As Acorn is connected to the Canadian government, and it then went to the Canadian. I think they're venture capitalists or something.
Well, yeah. So it's still the Skyport is still majority owned by Acorn, which is a Canadian company, right? But the company that owns the minority interest, is still 49%, is also a Canadian company, enterprise as well, right? Gotcha. So it's Canadian. Yeah, the capital did flow from that resource. Their lenders are Canadian and American as well. So.
Is that okay, Kola?
Okay. One more thing.
Yes.
There's no way that we're going to get back that airport within 21 years. The state that is in now. There's no way.
Okay. Well.
So you can forget that.
Thank you, Kola.
We're gonna keep an eye on that. Make sure that we do.
Yeah. You're all right. Goodbye.
Thank you, Kola. But in the reality, there is that if that's the obligation,
It is.
it's going to be fewer wear and tear expected, but it is what it is. What can you expect? It's going to be a 30-year-old building. As best you can, we'll be handed back to you.
There's a significant life cycling and capital injections and upgrades, right? That's built into the model. I told you they get all the revenue.
Yes.
Right. So once the debt is repaid to build this building, you're now using those funds for the next round of life cycle capital upgrades, right? You should never let an airport terminal run down to the ground, to nothing, not after 30 years.
Which means it's going to happen, yes.
Yeah, simply stated, they're obligated to give it back to us in the condition that, quote unquote, we gave it to them, which is brand new. And so therefore, they have to, as Lester said, invest in it over time to make sure that it's in that condition.
Gotcha. Okay, well, thanks again to the listening audience for joining us here on Magic 102.7 on your Sunday evening. Really, really thank you for starting out your year with us, your year being today, January the 11th. And looking forward to next week. I will let you know, I'm going to reconfirm our guest for next week. But again, it's going to be something exciting. It's going to be something that touches all of us. And it's going to be very, very important. So looking forward to you tuning in again next week and for the weeks beyond on Insight on Magic 102.7 on Sunday evenings from 8 to 10 p.m. Thank you, Bermuda. Remember also, if you're out early or late, to please wear a high visibility vest, or light or otherwise, because we don't want to have unnecessary accidents or injuries. Bermuda, have a great week. Good night.
Bermuda Live on YouTube. Subscribe now.